We are coming together here, Terry and I, after not having met for a few weeks. And that wouldn't be reflected in our podcast episodes. But as always, when we come together, we really just begin to visit. And we had a longer visit today since we have not got to be together in the way that we might normally. And lots of life is happening, and we were just sharing. And so we welcome you all back, and I'll pass it over to you, Terry, as we just begin to get our conversation going wherever we find ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Stacy. It has been a few weeks, and one of the things that I really want listeners to know is like when we take a couple of weeks, even though you're still going to get your episode every week, when we take a couple of weeks, it also allows us to kind of step back and view the bigger picture. So that when we're coming back together, we're really bringing in things that are current, that are happening in our own lives, and bringing those nuggets of, hey, this worked and this feels good and this is the result. One of those things for me, I've been in a transition. I was breaking a pattern that had been a pattern in my life for probably about 15 years on and off. And that pattern really had to do with female to female power difficulties and treatment of myself. And previously, I really was somebody who would look to that female that had power over me for to really authenticate me as a human, to accept me, to find my worthiness. And it really is a little unbelievable the amount of female role models, supervisors, persons above me over the last 15 years that really have been at minimum verbally abusive to me. And one of those things that I really was trying to thought I had already previously broke this pattern. Um, and this time, as I walked through it, it was so different. I was different. My responses were different. And my ability in which to stand up and say, okay, I am done with this, was so different. And it came from a different place. It didn't come from a place of hurt. It didn't come from a place of anger. It didn't come from these places where it previously had come from, um, you know, and it came from this place of, nope. I am worthy. I am worthy of everything the universe holds for me, and I am worthy of good things, being treated well, having respect, mutual respect, compassion, love, empathy, and connectedness. And one of the ironic things about these persons in my life, these females, who I very much, I want to say, looked up to and honored in that way. Um, One of the things that I needed to learn and is that I honor who they are, and their knowledge and the glass ceilings some of them have shattered, because I am all about women power, women being able to do things. So I honor those pieces, but I don't honor that they stepped on my back in which to be there. And so really aligning myself with women who are partners, even if there's a power differential, right? But they are partners, and realize that when we are together and we are working together and we are moving forward together, we're so much stronger. Um, and we don't, and I don't get into politics. I'm not getting into politics, but the timing of this for me, um, is so coinciding to some of the other things that are going on in the world when it comes to women supporting other women. That's all I mean.
Mhm.
I'm not going to jump into politicalness, but it really comes at that same time. And I also feel like y'all gonna hear me get a little sappy. Like there's a lot of thankfulness to Stacy because Stacy really has been one of those powerful females in my life that have allowed me to take these steps and in this pattern because both Stacy and I know that this is done for me. This will not repeat again. I have learned what I needed to and I have stepped through with grace and but also holding myself in a place of honor and worthiness as I moved through this. So there has been a lot going on over the last few weeks, but I would be remiss if I did not truly thank Stacy for just her support and her love and just guidance even as I walked through this very difficult situation. And I feel like, we had talked about soul retrieval a couple of episodes ago, and that was part of this process. I was retrieving my soul from these situations. And, I really have worked on integrating that back in. And I have come to a place, without revealing a lot of details, but I've come to a place where literally I have been wrapped up um, by a community that is so important to me and just really very supportive. And I think this is the other side of that struggle, that difficulty, that heartbreak, that anger, whatever, it was that I've felt in the past. And so we've talked about when we break a pattern, when we retrieve our soul back, when we do these steps that this weight kind of lifts off and you feel so much lighter. And I'll just say, many of the choices that I've made over the last month and a half, 2 months are scary. And, I gave up a lot of things to make the choices that I made, but I also know those are materialistic things. And I know that my soul is what is so important, and doing my heart work, my soul work, and being connected is so important. But I'll volley over to you. And I hope that that made sense, but I'll let you clarify anything if
Oh
I
my
was.
gosh. Makes so much sense. I resonate with so much of your experience and our experience together. And it's just been my honor to be your friend, your soul, our soul level, whatever we call it. We don't call it anything, it just is.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful. And I have the same experience with regard to, you know, I know I'm not alone. I'm so understood by you with you. And when I'm saying understood, it's not primarily cognitive.
Hmm.
It's just this when you have, and I'm sure listeners may relate, the people in your life that are your people,
Hmm.
your tribe,
Yeah.
they honor you and care about you without conditions and judgment. And it's not that we never judge or don't have different opinions that we might have aware of in our own self, whether we say them out loud or not. But we all need that. We need it within ourselves. And we've talked about going inward and connecting with that loving part of us, that essence, especially if we don't feel that resonates. So therefore we don't open up ourselves to the possibilities of these friendships.
Yeah.
And so that piece of we're not alone from the inside and the outside. And so many of us, and I know for me, it's been a lot of living my life looking to the outside to be enough. And so many things resonated about what you were sharing, but like with the challenges you were going through. And what's coming into my mind right now is when we do feel like someone's sort of stepping on us to be themselves or to get somewhere or whatever, I can be aware of so many aspects of that, that it's their fear and it's their insecurity and all those things. But it doesn't mean we have to, and it's not in our highest good to just let them mistreat us. And it is like you're saying, it's quite a journey working through that pattern. And I think most anyone who's worked through anything knows there's a lot of emotions,
Mhm.
painful emotions,
Mhm.
really difficult belief systems to look at about ourselves because that happened and it's not our fault. I am not going to the place of we allowed it, we need to whatever. It's part of the journey so we can learn to whatever we're meant, whatever's meant for us in this lifetime. And certainly Terry and I have this in common, and probably every human at some level. We're meant to work through some things to get to our own truth and step into our power. And we can do it in baby steps. But it's interesting, right? The baby steps lead up to like what you've experienced the last few months that was so big. That's like, we're ready when we're ready to do this piece and this and this piece. But what's so beautiful is, and we named like, that pattern is done.
Mhm.
And there can be like an attachment of part of it's like, well, I just want to get to the pattern being done. So then we can be in this fix it, fix it, fix it.
Right.
Can I just, and that can be absolutely helpful and purposeful and maybe even necessary. But like I can speak a little bit for myself, like there was such a whatever's wrong with me, I need to fix it. Like, okay, I know I'm so much more, but then parts of me don't know it. And then they're still scared. So then I'm still in the pattern,
Mhm.
different levels and stuff. But there can be a part of us that's so like, can I just take over now and just make this be done? That's also a pattern. It's
Mhm.
nothing to get rid of. So I guess that's also coming up right now. That's like we're not saying the pattern isn't it becomes problematic, right? Because we want so much more out of our experience in this physical body.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we've always said throughout in our podcast, whether or not we say it every episode, is there's nothing wrong with you.
Mhm.
We are not broken. We are all inherently worthy. We are pure love and therefore lovable. We just have forgotten that.
Mhm. Yep.
So while we can go in and out of this, oh, but I want, when we want something and it's like this deep desire, somehow it's meant for us then, meant for us to look at,
Mhm.
be with, but that may not be the end game. Our spirit and higher self, like it knows so much more that is meant for us that our mind can't ever
Mhm.
begin to probably tap into, and it doesn't have to. The mind tries to keep us safe, keeps us limited, and even the patterns. So, like that misery, right? The challenge, and maybe even suffering when we're in the patterns, feeling all those tumultuous emotions and heartbreak or whatever, that it's still here for us. Like we say, everything's happening for us. And it's not, I believe anyway, it's not here to, it's not here to punish us or because some people like, well, if I'm such a good human, why is this happening to me?
Mhm.
Because we're trying to make logical sense. And it
Mhm.
really goes beyond logic. And what I love is we all can experience that more and more. When we do go inward, we might need some tools, we might need some guidance from someone like Terry, someone like me, or whatever it might be. But it's getting into more presence in the consciousness of who we are in
Mhm.
the moment, which means feeling some feelings and whatever. And we're all in different places with that. So it's like I heard I don't know if I've ever said this or not in any of our podcasts, but I heard this somewhere, I don't know where, years ago, like zoom in, zoom out. I think I probably have said it to you, Terry, whether or not I say it, but like zoom in is just like being really like present, and that could be really uncomfortable. It could feel really beautiful. And then zoom out, like when you said our few week break was like, so we come back in with a different, more stepping back perspective.
Mhm.
All of it has purpose, all of it's beautiful.
Yep.
And I'll just hand it back over to you. A lovely conversation.
It definitely is. And, you know, as I sit here and think about, like, I think sometimes, depending on where we are in our journey, we're not even at the point of recognizing that we're having a repeating pattern.
Mm,
And I think it's important to go back to that
mm,
square one and talk about, you know, I think the first awareness of that is when we begin to say things like, why does this always happen to me? Right?
mm,
Like, and then when we actually start that phrasing, and remember, things aren't happening to you, they're
mm,
happening for you. But we do use that language of, why does this always happen to me?
mm,
At that moment, if we are able to stop
mm,
and look and see
mm,
each single individual situation for what it is, that is the beginning of breaking that pattern.
mm.
And but that's I think that's the hardest moment. Like
Yes.
that initial recognition is the hardest moment. And like I said, I thought I was already done with this because I could go into so much detail, but there has been, like I said, this is like a 15-year thing, but in the last 5 years, I really handled someone differently and stood up for myself. And I thought, this is it, right? Doesn't mean we got it the way we were supposed to get it.
Mhm,
And that's why, as I've gone full circle in this, it really had everything to do with as I was walking through it,
mhm,
um, how I was responding, how I was taking care of myself in that. Because I can look back previously, and some of the previous things just felt like survival and let me get out, right? Which was still avoiding the lesson that I needed to
mhm,
have from it, right? It was let me get out, let me get out, let me get out. And even though, like I said, 5 years ago, I stood up for myself, put my foot down, and I thought, this is it because I'm standing up, I'm advocating for me, and this isn't going to happen anymore. Little did I know the universe wasn't done, right? Because of I was stepping I was stepping up for me out of anger is where I was. Like, I'm tired of this. This is not going to happen anymore, yada, yada, yada. So I wasn't really learning what I needed to learn from the situation and the pattern.
mhm,
So it took two more
mhm.
times for me to finally get to a place where it was just like, I'm not going to allow this to harm me. I'm not going to allow this to define my worthiness. I am going to remain respectful. I am going to have a voice and I'm going to walk through this and to the end of this. And I didn't, Stacy is very well aware of how long this latest one had been happening. She pretty much had walked through me with me through all of that time period. And I think even Stacy could say the shift that she saw, when it first started happening, I really very much retreated inside myself. And that wasn't what I was supposed to do either, right? And but I was able to really reflect and change my responses to the situation, to the patterns. Um, so the whole point of what I'm saying in this is that when you identify that moment where you're like, why does this always keep happening to me? When you identify that moment, that's your launching off point. And you need to set and reflect on whether it's happened twice, 3 times, 4 times, each individual happening of this. You need to walk through, figure out what you were feeling, figure out your responses, figure out, and each time it happened, Were you changing? Were you growing? Were you handling things differently? And now you're in it again. And how can we combine all of those and
Mm-hmm.
respond differently this time?
Beautiful. Yes. Yes. And absolutely being with you on this journey. You know, it's so lovely when you have a special friendship with someone like Terry and I have. We have our own experience of being in our own body, our perception of whatever, and the beautiful nature of being seen by a lovely human, like how Terry and I see each other, human, spiritual, all of that, is that we can get insights that we wouldn't see. We
Mhm,
can have just another level of consciousness. And I mean, so many things were coming in when you were sharing about there is something we're meant to learn and, of course, grow that ultimately, eventually, whatever we want to call it, clears and heals that particular pattern. And so when we go into that survival mode, so like anger is very much a survival
mhm.
mode type of reaction in the body.
Yep,
It is a reaction to something.
yep.
And we have talked about, at least somewhat on this podcast, about, maybe we haven't said it this way, I don't know. But what was coming up for me as I was listening is we don't have the capacity in that particular moment, if this is offline because we're in that trigger anger response, it still serves a purpose. There's nothing wrong. I want people to hear that. There's nothing wrong with you
Mhm,
that you're having that experience. It is still for you.
mhm,
But so would you say, Terry, I'm going to link it in since we have this lovely example of you having recently gone through something that's so fresh here. Every time, so the 5 years you're talking about, you went into whatever level of response of anger, survival, pulling back into yourself.
mhm,
But then along the way, you are becoming more and more aware of all of you,
mhm,
like how to get to that awareness we're talking about. Because I know I was asking that question of, okay, great. Because I've listened to people talk about similar things. We're unique and we're talking about it in our own special way here. That's like, okay, how do I get so awake I don't ever have to go back in to that old response?
mhm.
And I just want to name really quick before I invite you is that we can get attached to, can I just have that now? And then what Terry's talking about then is you're still skipping over. And again, you're doing nothing wrong, but a part of us is like, I want to avoid that pain
Mhm.
though. So I don't know what, if anything, might be coming in that you would like to share with our listeners about, and you're unique, you're you, but what we hear from you and from your experience can be very relatable to so many people.
Yeah. I have to say that at the beginning of this one was really the first time that I retreated inside, because anybody who knows me personally knows I'm kind of a firecracker. I'm not one to back down from something. I'm not one to, you know, um, go, and I don't mean in the positive way, go inside, because we go inside to heal, but
Right.
that's not what I was doing. I was hiding, right? Like I was making myself small. Um, and that is so not me. And, but here's the thing. It had never been a response that I had had. And I think sometimes in our lessons, in our journey, sometimes we have to have a response that we've never previously had, so we know what it feels like. And I had not
The
had,
contrast.
yep, exactly. And I had not ever had that. And it, at the beginning, that's what happened. And I can't, Stacy, I know you and I talked during that period of time where I was really pulling in and really not getting things done that I'm used to getting done. And we'll even say, there was some depression going on, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that has literally never been one of my responses. And it was mind-boggling going through it. And I didn't really understand why I was responding, but I was disconnected from me, right? Because there it goes, right? That safety.
Yes.
I didn't want to feel what I had felt so
Mhm.
many times. And
Mhm.
so I was disconnecting. And, and that's where depression happens too, is when we disconnect from self, we
Mhm.
disconnect from what we're experiencing and that avoidance. Um, and
Mhm.
but I think it was very valuable. I just want to be really clear that no matter how we walk through a pattern,
Mhm.
each step is very valuable to teaching us something about ourselves, and to teach us how to comfort ourselves, how to love ourselves, how to give that kindness and that grace to ourselves. Um, and sometimes we need a shakeup of something we've never responded with because we're not paying enough attention to those
Right.
pieces of self and giving that kindness and that compassion. And I think it's
Yes.
so important that above
Yes.
and beyond anything, no matter how you've responded to something, even if, there's been times I've responded to things that I am not proud of. And no matter how you have, it's still about comforting self and loving self and finding that worthiness in self.
Yes, and even when we have a new type of response to something that just draws us inward away from the external threat, but then also we can feel inward like alone.
Hmm.
And when we experience, and just to stick with that example of depression, because people, especially anyone who struggles with any long-term
Yeah.
experience of depression, it can be very scary because, and I've worked with clients long enough to hear them describe, they start to feel better and then but they feel like they're regressing and slipping back.
Yep.
And I've had a whole, just side note, I've had a whole reframe on what depression even is from a spiritual
Yes.
perspective.
Hmm.
And traditional mental health treatments have certain benefit value and all of that. But when people are in really, really long term, and so I just want to throw that out there in case anyone's listening, that's like really, it's like, oh no, I'm going into my depression. When you said, I'm not going to remember your words exactly, but depression is a disconnect from self, and we are suppressing emotions. Emotions are energy,
Hmm.
and it's blocking the feelings to stay safe.
Hmm.
All there's nothing wrong going on there. But for you and for so many of us, it can bring us out to a new expanded experience
Hmm.
of our own self, of our own beingness.
Yep.
And to pull in remembering, as you said, it's when we remember, and I know it's really challenging when we're not in the space of the awareness while we're going through it. But I can pretty much say to people, I can't promise, but it is super likely it will come in more and more earlier and earlier on in your response, especially if you're listening to podcasts like this and you are somehow intending, even if you don't do it every day, I do recommend it. I'm doing this every day now. I'll forget, like when we're struggling, we forget, everything goes out the window. So a daily practice of some check-in,
Hmm.
whatever that is for people,
Yep.
so that it helps us be more and more and more aware.
Hmm.
I can't get lost in a big reaction so much anymore
Hmm. Yep.
because you will start to, you'll expand and you're changing at this even cellular level, however all this works.
Hmm.
Consciousness is powerful.
Yep.
It does get easier, but it doesn't mean you're never going to go have, like you said, another experience that drew a new response within you
Yep.
that was super challenging. And I will say, being with you on this part of that journey, it didn't last as long. The depressiveness, you were
Right.
not, let's just let people know, you weren't there for weeks.
Mm-mm.
You were not. And if you were, that would have been okay. That would have
Yeah.
been what you needed, but you weren't.
Hmm.
It was beautiful. It was so beautiful to witness with Terry, like what she went. And I relate because we both have our experiences and I share with Terry too. And the reflection that can come back of just, and not that it, and it doesn't have to be that, it doesn't have to be anything.
Hmm.
It's just being with
Hmm.
and accepting and as much as we can, honoring, loving all that we are. It sounds like maybe we're coming to a closure for this conversation, and but I don't want to. It doesn't need to be from me here. I just want to invite if there's anything else that's sparking for you that you want to share, and I'll let you kind of close it. And
I just the one thing that I would say, and I want to remind people of, is that nothing is a failure. And there's nothing that doesn't serve a purpose, right? And even in those moments where we feel like we failed or we, didn't get what we wanted or we did, whatever it is, um, everything has purpose. And there is a lesson and a blessing in everything. It's about what we focus on when it comes to it, right? Because I will say, like, and Stacy knows this situation that I know is now broken, the pattern that I know is now broken, came at a great cost. It came at a great cost. And I could choose to focus on that, or I could choose to focus on all the lessons and blessings that I received throughout
right.
the whole journey. And that's what I choose to focus on, because I know moving forward, there's going to be so much beauty, there's going to be so much love and so much acceptance of self, um, that this dynamic doesn't happen again. Um, and I'm okay losing some materialistic things, when it means that my soul is filled up. So
Yes, beautiful. Nice words for closing today. Thank you so much, everyone.
thank you,
So
Meg.
grateful to be here.
Yeah.
You. We'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah,
Bye
thank
for
you.
now.